through utilizing social media and the internet. And I'm just going to go to a little bit of my history and how I got started into doing that as well. And hopefully you guys can find the information valuable. So first things first, I did not start my education in photography. I did not go to school for photography. I'm taught, but so what I business. So that's how I primarily got started, learning how to market and advertise any type of conceptual business. And in the case of me, I learned how to market and brand myself first as a photographer before learning the technical aspects of photography. And that was because I'd never been interested in being a poor artist. And that's very important because a lot of times what I find is that photographers tend to focus most of their energies and efforts in learning their skills, but not learning how to run their business. So that's what I'm going to go into. As I said, my history, going to university for advertising and marketing. And I always knew from the very beginning that I wanted to be a fashion photographer. I did not want to be any other kind of photographer. And I find that knowing exactly the niche that I wanted to be in helped me to keep a laser focus on my goals and intentions as a photographer. So to go into a little bit more detail with that, usually when I find that my students that are photographers, when they are first starting, they want to do everything. They want to do wedding photography, they want to do event photography, wildlife photography, all kinds of stuff. I never was interested in any of that but fashion. So that helped me a lot by knowing exactly what I wanted to do within photography. And in the aspect of fashion photography, there are a lot of different genres, like commercial photography, wherein you're shooting for primarily brands to sell their clothes to make them look more expensive than what they are. Then you have lifestyle photography, which is mostly the photography that you see for a lot of campaigns that are, well, let me think of how I can relate that to the Egyptian market. Department stores, that's mostly like your lifestyle photography and things like that. But my concentration was in high fashion and editorial. These are a lot of your European and American brands like Gucci, Tom Ford, Louis Vuitton, all of those type of brands are more so your editorial and your high fashion. And that's where my concentration was in. So knowing that, I knew that there was only one place in the United States that I could actually properly train myself for that market, and that was in New York City. I'm originally from Atlanta, Georgia in the United States, which does not have a fashion industry. So I knew early on that I was going to have to travel to New York. And I had no money at the time. I was early 20s and I had a dream. And so I would drive 14 hours from Atlanta to New York City twice a month, just so that I could work in the New York market. And I could not afford a hotel because I was a young college student. So many times my sister and I would sleep in a car that we drove up there. We would go find a hotel so we could shower, and then I would go into the studio. So it's not as glamorous starting out as a lot of people thought that my career was, because no one in New York knew that I was sleeping in a car. We were faking it until we made it. And so I took all the money that I did have and I reinvested it back into my company, which was booking photography studios, booking models, booking professional makeup artists and hairstylists. So when it comes to actually building my team in the beginning, I find that that paid itself forward so much more until like I'm still eating off of that investment almost 20 years later. So I want to go jump straight into the business of it now that I gave you a little bit of my background and history. For 10 years, I was not making any money as a fashion photographer. My work would have showed differently, and the way that I branded myself online made it seem like I was successful when I was struggling. And most photographers in this industry will tell you the same thing. So for 10 years, I just took all of that time learning my craft, learning how to build a signature style for myself, building my brand through social media, and just networking. A lot of it came from a lot of networking. And I cannot stress that enough, that it doesn't matter how your training is, how good or talented you are as a photographer. If you don't know the right people, it's going to be a lot harder for you to be successful in this industry. So currently, as I mentioned earlier, my studios are in New York, Los Angeles, and I'm building one in Miami. But I also work internationally through London, Paris, and like I mentioned before, I came to Egypt quite a bit. But most of my work is primarily in New York, London, Paris, and LA. Now, the reason why I was able to secure working in all of these different markets is because I took my money that I was getting paid with and I traveled with it. I didn't sit there and just buy the latest equipment every time a new camera came out. To me, that's like a waste of your effort because there's always going to be another camera coming out. I've been shooting with the same camera now for probably 5 years. And a lot of these camera companies, Nikon, Sony, they send me free stuff all the time. But I'm so used to what I'm good at that I don't risk shooting with different cameras. I want to master the camera that I already have. And then when that camera can no longer serve me, I will change and upgrade to another camera. So if I give any advice about that kind of stuff, don't spend your money, all of your money on equipment. Most of your clients, when you reach a certain level, they're going to be paying you for that stuff anyway. So I would take my money and I would reinvest it into going to different markets, meeting different people from all of the different industries, which is what brought me to Egypt in 2015 for the first time. So this was the first shot that I took in 2015, where I brought, I think it was like almost 13 people with me from the United States. Those were makeup artists, hairstylists, wardrobe stylists, designers, and models, and a couple of photographers who were training up under me. We didn't know anybody in Egypt. We didn't know any connections, nothing. I met a wonderful guy who rented our Airbnb to us, who I come to find out that he knew a lot of people in Egypt, so he was able to help us put a lot of our shoots together. But the reason why this shot was so important to my career is because it's the photograph that got me noticed by Time magazine. I had been featured in a lot of smaller fashion magazines prior to that, but it wasn't until Time magazine noticed the work that I did here in Egypt that my career took off. And that was after 10 years of being in the industry. So a key point that I would like to share about that would be, it's not always important about which magazine you're in, because I got no notification through the industry when I first shot for Vogue magazine. Even though Vogue is a very prominent magazine, it wasn't until Time magazine. And that is because many people who read Time magazine are not interested in the fashion industry, but they have connections throughout the world industry. So Time magazine did a feature on me for the top 12 African-American photographers in the world, and they utilized this image, which got the attention of the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. They did a curation for me of several of my selected images, and from there, I started getting contact by a lot of bigger magazines like Vogue Mexico, Vogue Latin America, Vogue Nippon, which is Vogue Japan, and several other prominent magazines, but they didn't come until after I did this shoot and it was featured in Time magazine, which just goes to show you that there are unconventional ways that you can go about getting yourself recognized throughout the industry. A lot of fashion photographers are stressing about getting inside fashion magazines when that's not the only trajectory that you can take your career in order to get yourself your work noticed. So after that, I was featured in several different magazines, and I noticed that I was booking a lot of jobs, but I wasn't making nearly as much money as some of my contemporary peers. So I wanted to figure out what could I do to actually generate the type of clientele that I wanted without actually signing to a photography agency. For those of you all who don't know what a photography agency is, I'm just going to act like nobody in the room knows what that is. So just like how models have agencies that they're represented by that find them jobs, photographers, creatives, makeup artists, hairstylists, they also have agencies as well. I did not want to go that route because I had for 10 years been building my own brand and booking my own clients, and I just didn't want to share 20% of my money with an agency who did not do anything to get me those jobs because I built them before the agency. So what I did was I went and I hired a project manager instead, someone who I was their only business. And we went about sending me throughout the world to different markets to meet with different people so that I could show my work to them rather than waiting on an agency to do that. Social media was a huge platform for that as well. Whereas in a lot of my students, they didn't want to get into Instagram and Facebook and things like that because they said it was so hard to get their work noticed on there. It's a full-time job, though. Getting on social media, putting your work out there, consistently talking to people who actually follow your work and engage with your work, because you just never know who's in your direct audience who can actually take your work to that next level. And that's what we concentrated on doing. Another reason why I find out that I was not getting paid nearly as much as my contemporary peers is because I did not understand how licensing worked. Most photographers don't. Most photographers spend their entire career just building their talent so that they can be good photographers, but not necessarily good businessmen or good businesswomen. So I want to go into licensing. For those of you all who are not familiar, we do not make, as fashion photographers, we do not make our money off of day rates like most of us think we do. A day rate is essentially a client paying you for between 0 to 8 hours for a full day. Usually that rate could start off in US dollars, would be like the lowest is like $5,000. That's not a lot of money. The money actually comes in from licensing your work. That's different for every market, it's different for every country. I'm just going to use the United States as an example because that's what I have the most experience with. So essentially, if I was to do a shoot, someone would book me for my day rate. I come in, perform the actual physical service of photography for them. The licensing comes in when they want to reuse the image. You as a photographer own the rights to that image. You get paid every time they utilize those photographs. It can be a year from now, it could be 10 years from now, it could be 50 years from now, depending on how you negotiated the contract for your licensing. That is equivocally way more money than your day rate. For an example, I'm not going to use the name of the company, but it's a very prestigious company in the United States that I did work for. The day rate, and most photographers won't tell you their day rate. I don't care. I hope you make more money than me. My day rate was $10,000 US for that job. I made $75,000 off of it because of licensing, because they reused the images. Now, this was my first time dealing with licensing, and I didn't know that I still wasn't charging enough. That's why it's good to have an agent, and I didn't know that. I wanted all the money. I didn't want to share it with an agent. I should have. When I went to my business attorney, and I was happy because I was like, hey, I made $75,000. They were like, you also missed $30,000, $30,000 US, because I did not know how licensing worked. So if you're going to educate yourself on anything when it comes to the business of photography, educate yourself on licensing. And from that, I'm going to discuss how I price myself, and you can use the information that I give you and apply it to your own business. Because a lot of times photographers, when they're starting out, they don't know how much to charge for their services. They're like, I don't want to charge too much because I don't want to lose the client, but I don't want to charge too little and miss out on how much I actually am worth. What I do is I use a 50-50 ratio. So what that means is, first question that my business manager will ask the client is, do you have a budget and what is your budget? Clients usually do not ever want to tell you what their budget is. They're going to be like, hey, well, just tell us what you're charging and then we'll see if that works for us. They're doing that because if you throw out a number and it's lower than what they were actually willing to pay you, they're not going to pay you what they were going to give you. They're going to pay you what you asked for. So it's a dance between going back and forth with the numbers. So what we like to do is we have what I would take for the minimum for the job. Let's just say the minimum I would do is $20,000 US for that job. We're not going to tell the client that. We're going to go double. We're going to tell them 40,000. We know they're not going to pay 40,000, but we're trying to meet in the middle. They're going to come back immediately and be like, whoa, no, we don't have the budget for 40,000 US. We can do 30. That's 10 to 20 higher than what I originally wanted. So that's where we met in the middle. It's a dance, a 50-50 type thing. And from there, you go into discussing your licensing. Usually corporate clients, let's just use as an example, the Walt Disney Company, Netflix, Warner Brothers, these are big corporate companies. They already have a licensing contract that they're going to send over to you. But it's usually going to take a while before you get to that level. So the smaller independent companies, like let's say, for instance, a local fashion designer wants you to shoot their catalog or their campaign. They don't have $50,000 to pay you. So you're not going to tell them the same rate that you would a big corporate client. They cannot afford that. So you have to research your client first and foremost to see what you think that they have the budget for based upon their previous productions, based upon the previous photographers that they work with. Then you can gauge how much you feel like you can charge them. Like say for an independent fashion designer that would come to us, the minimum that I would take is $5,000 and I'm only going to do a half day that's 0 to 4 hours. Now, usually these independent clients know nothing about licensing. They're just like, well, I hire you to do a shoot. You come in, you do the shoot, you give us the photos, and that's it. That's not how it works. So even if they're not willing to pay you your licensing fee, you should still have a contract in place for licensing. Even if you decide to write the licensing fee off, I'm not sure how it works in Egypt, but with the US, we can write that off on our taxes. We can be like, hey, I comp this client, the licensing fee. My licensing fee should have been $45,000. I did not charge this client that, so I can write it off as a donation on my taxes. You don't know that unless you do the researching, no. And I learned it the hard way, so I can share it with you for free. So moving on from that, I would like to also go into contracts because that's a huge part of the business of photography. Your contracts are what's going to save you a huge headache down the road. And I learned that the hard way. In your contract, you always want to state, of course, what the budget is. You want to state what the licensing is. And you also want to state in your contract what your expectations of the productions are. What you give the client, which are the photos, are called your deliverables. With your deliverables, you have to be very specific in saying, you're hiring me to come shoot your production for this amount of money, for this amount of time. And in that amount of time, I am going to provide you, the client, with these deliverables and be extremely specific about that. So for an example of deliverables for an independent client that one, you're paying me for my time, that's 0 to 8 hours. What you're going to get back from me are of the production. That's standard industry practice. But I also have it in my contract to offer the services of my team. That's makeup, hair, wardrobe, videography, retouching. I give them all of those options. And from there, we discuss the rates for that. All of that is included in the actual contract so that when you get there, there's no surprises. Other little smaller things that we like to add into the contract are craft services. That's basically your catering. I don't eat meat. So it's in my contract that they have to provide food options that I can eat. Like little bitty things like that are just something you just don't know unless someone tells it to you, like a teacher or something like that. So I learned that stuff the hard way. If you don't put it in a contract that they don't have to feed you and your team, some clients just won't. It should be a little bit is how it is. So we put it all in our contract. Even if it's like, if you fly into London to do a shoot, it should be in your contract that they should provide a car service for you to pick you and your team up, to take you to your hotel. They should cover your lodging. They should cover any expenses, that food that you eat and things like that. Most clients don't have a problem with it, but if you don't mention it, if you don't put it in your contract, there are some clients who will just make you pay for all of your own stuff, which you should not. If you're being flown to some place to work for them, you should not pay for anything. Just that's standard industry practice. But if you don't know it, you don't know it. So moving on from contracts, wait, are we doing questions and answers? I'm going to do a question and answer. Does anybody have any questions about licensing or contracts? Yes. Yes.
So at which phase of your career did you start doing the 50-50 theory or the 50-50 approach to licensing and to your rates and stuff like this? Is it at the early stage or when you're now established and really good at what you do and people demand you, you know?
Okay, so when did I start using the 50-50 policy for my jobs? Okay, too late. I was a professional photographer for 10 years before I applied that. So I missed out on a lot of money early on in my career because I was still working, I was still doing jobs, but I was literally, if the client told me they were going to pay me $1,000 I was like, ooh, money, good, yes, I'll take it. I didn't realize that I was underselling myself for 10 years. Because even when you're a beginning photographer, you're still providing a service that you should be compensated for based upon your level of experience and your expertise. So I did not start applying that until I want to say 3 or 4 years ago. I've been a professional photographer for about 16 or 17 years. And it wasn't until I had my largest corporate client. My manager has been with me the whole time, so they learn along with me. So when we were presented the client's contract, it was 20 pages long. I was completely intimidated, but I wanted to work with this client so bad that I didn't want to mess anything up by challenging the contract. It was for the wisdom of my manager was like, I know you're excited. I know this is a big client, our biggest client ever, but let's take this to an attorney, a lawyer, to have them read over it before we sign it. And we did that. It was in the middle of the night. We contacted our attorney. We sent it over to them. They read through it and they were like, this is a horrible contract. Do not sign this. They went through it the whole night. We stayed up drinking coffee, just reading through these 20 pages of contract. And we saw that they did not want to pay us for almost anything except the day rate. This is one of the top 5 largest companies in the world. And they knew that if they sent us this 20-page contract, that it would intimidate us and we would just sign it because we didn't have an agency behind us. So the attorney was like, this does not apply to you, this does not apply to you, this does not apply to you. And so put it like this, at the end, the contract was only 2 pages long. And then the attorney comes back to me and was like, every time you want to negotiate your rate, this is how you do it. Take the minimum that you want, the very least, and double it. And I got that idea from my attorney, not from another photographer, not anybody in the industry, but from my attorney. And it has served me well ever since then. But it only gets more complicated the bigger the jobs are. Now, I have not had a client as prestigious as that one again, because I've been working with them now for 3 years. Now we have a new contract. Now, that client booked me exclusively as their photographer, big division. But that came off of negotiations when they were like, your rate is a little high. We don't want to keep bringing you back in for this job because your rate is going over our budget. And I was like, well, let me get my rate down to the budget that works for you. If you can sign me to a contract that I am your photographer now for the next year, then we can go this lower rate. But that's the only way I'm going to negotiate a lower rate, is if you give me a contract saying that I'm your exclusive photographer for a certain term of time.
Thank you.
Yep. Hey.
Hello.
Hey.
Okay, so would only agree to pay for your day rate as opposed to paying things such as like accommodation or transportation, or actually also days off. So let's say that you have to fly out for like 3 days, although you're working just for 1 day. How would you charge the travel days or the days off if you're not shooting, but you are blocked because you're outside of town for this client traveling or something?
Okay, so what she's asking me is, how do I determine my day rate for productions where I'm only working 1 day, but it takes me 3 days to be there? Which is a very good, valid question. Okay, so my day rate is my day rate. You're not paying for my camera. You're not paying for me to actually take pictures. You're paying for my time. So those other 2 days that I'm not working and I'm in, like say I'm in transit,
Yeah.
Those are days I could be working.
Right.
So you're gonna have to pay for all 3 of those days. Now, I'll ask for a lower rate for those 2 days. Let's say, for instance, my work day, my rate is $10,000 for that. For the other days, I would do half days. okay? But you're going to pay for those because those are time. Usually the client is going to offer you a set amount, a rate for the whole time. And that's usually going to compensate all of your days. But you're going to get some of those crooked clients who are going to try to be like, oh, well, you're only working one day though. You cannot afford my services. We're just going to skip past that. If you don't want to pay me and my team for our time, you just cannot afford our services. Please learn that you have to walk away sometimes when they're not willing to pay you. You're going to think, oh, I have bills to pay. I need this money. Trust me, the money will come. And before I take the next question, I want to go into a little bit of my business philosophy, which is never, ever, ever chase money. Never. Put yourself in vibration, and I'll explain that in a little bit, but place yourself in is that if maybe 20 years ago, as a photographer, we could contact, we call it cold calling, where we would just send our portfolio, send our resume to different jobs. They would read through it, and if they liked it, they would book us. That is not how it works anymore. The majority of my clients, all the way from Netflix to Walt Disney Company, found my work on Instagram. I cannot stress that enough. For everybody who thinks that Instagram and Facebook is not that important, majority of my clients came from social media. They go onto my page, they scroll through, and then they go to my website. When I first started in the industry, my website was my landing page. They went there first. No longer the case. When Netflix first contacted me, they sent me a message through DM, and I thought it was fake. I was like, well, sure, you're Netflix. Do me a favor and contact my manager at info@shamayimstudios.com. And they did. My manager comes to the office and was like, Shamayim, I got an email from Netflix. And I was like, yeah, somebody's playing around on Instagram. He was like, no, I researched them. They're real. I was like, oh, why did they contact me on Instagram? Why didn't they contact me through my website? My website is how my work should be viewed. Now, I very, very specifically make sure my Instagram looks as though it is a professional portfolio, because majority of the people who are first encountering your work, that's the first thing they see. It's no more any business cards, it's your Instagram, until that changes in a couple of years. So, by not chasing the money and then putting myself in a branded position to where I was not just another photographer, but I was Shamayim. I was my own brand. You're not just hiring me for my camera, you're hiring me because I'm going to come in and I'm going to get on Instagram and I'm going to be like, hey guys, I'm right now in Cairo. Everybody, like, they want that. That's that energy, that branding that comes along with all of that. So your next photographer isn't going to do that. That other photographer uses that same Canon that you use, or Sony or Nikon, whatever, and they're just as talented as you. Why would they go with you over that next photographer? That's the question you should be asking yourself. Your brand is what does it. They know that when my team and I show up on set, I'm going to be driving some $400,000 sports car. I'm going to have a big round hat on. I'm going to be dressed in all black with shiny gold jewelry, and my team is going to dress like they all of that. It's a costume. Because when I'm at home, I'm in some sweats and a Star Wars shirt. But I know that my brand is just as expensive as the camera that I represent. What's going to separate an extremely talented photographer is the fact that I have 60,000.58 whatever Instagram followers that are engaged in my work, where that other photographer who doesn't care about social media only has like 2,000 or 3,000. I'm more valuable to my client because once I post that photo from that job, 60,000 something potential customers have seen it compared to that other photographer who only had 1,000 or 2,000. It's just about being more valuable to the marketplace. You're gonna pay me more because my value is more. When I come on set, I'm going to go do videography. I'm going to have someone doing social media, and my client is going to get so much more content than just the photos from the shoot. Then you can go to my social media. They're going to see Instagram stories. They're going to see Instagram reels. They're going to see behind the scenes videos. They're going to see everything that makes their their customers feel engaged in the entire process. That's what they're paying for, not just me to come and do pictures. Any other photographer can do that. I can give all of you guys the settings on my camera right now, and you will not be able to create the same image because we see the world differently. And once you learn how to train your eye and create that brand around the vision of how you see the world, then the clients start coming to you for that particular vision. Examples of branding your vision would be, for majority of my career, I shot in black and white, monochrome. Clients were coming to me specifically for that. But then I was having some clients come to me and was like, love your work, but most of my clothes are bright colors. Your work is in black and white. I don't know if you can shoot color very well. And I was like, well, I'm a photographer. I can shoot anything you ask me to shoot. And they were like, but your body of work doesn't say that. So then I started incorporating color. I did not learn how to see in color again as a photographer until 2019, when I was out in the desert here in Egypt in the middle of the night, freezing my butt off. Got up out of my tent. I don't even know how to pronounce the name of the desert. Where was the desert that I was at, ladies? Yes. What you guys said. And it was in the middle of the night, beautiful stars everywhere. I had an epiphany. And I come out and I started seeing in color. So I come back to America, and like my team is like bewildered, like, why are the photos in color? And I was like, Egypt made me see in color. And they were like, it's the desert. What colors did you see? Because there was a lack of color in the desert. When I did see the colors, it was way more vibrant to me. This reciprocated in my clients seeing that I could see color. I could appreciate color, and I was able to start creating colorful images. But that also became a part of my brand because it became a part of my story. Clients wanted to hear that story. If I'm sitting there waiting for the model to get finished makeup hair, and they were like, so where did you go into color? Well, I was in Egypt in the desert, and they just love that kind of stuff. It's part of the brand. It makes you more expensive than the next photographer who doesn't have a story. All they have is a camera. Questions? No questions? Good. I can move on to the next thing then. Okay, so when it comes to social media, what I did was, like, I believe in investing in education. So I spend thousands of dollars every year in different aspects of business. So I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk. We call him Gary V. He's motivational speaker, CEO, entrepreneur based out of America, an exceptional businessman. And I went to one of his business workshops. That was the most expensive workshop I've ever been in my life, but I made my money back over 20 times by now, based upon the education that I got from him that I'm about to share with you guys right now. It's called guerrilla marketing. This applies for any business. This applies for any market. It's not just photography. So if anybody is in the audience right now who's not a photographer, but you're in the business industry, this works for you. If you want to get your work out there, this is going back to what I was saying about attracting money to you instead of you chasing it. So the advice that he gave me was go onto Instagram every day and DM, direct message, no less than 50 people. Not selling yourself, introducing yourself. The reason why you're not booking as many jobs as you would like is because no one knows who you are. It's not because you're not a talented photographer or creative. It's because no one has ever heard of you. On Instagram, there has to be 500 million or more people on there. That's a lot. So in order for people to come across your work, you can't just expect them to just one day see you on their feed. That's not how the algorithm of social media works. So by contacting 50 potential clients every day, the odds, the math was on my side that I was going to book one of them. And you have to be consistent because it can become extremely tedious, and you can't cheat it. You can't just copy and paste a message to all 50 of them. You can't go on there and be like, hi, my name is SHAMAYIM. I love your work. I want to work with you. Go to my website. You're going to be really tempted to do that, but it won't work. They're going to tell that it's spam. and you're going to get flagged on Instagram. So what I would do was I'm like, okay, I just posted an image of a model in a swimsuit in an exotic location. So today I'm going to contact 50 swimwear designer brands. How do I find them? One, I'll go on LinkedIn and I will type in swimwear designers. It'll give me a list of people. I will go find their Instagrams, and then I would DM them directly. First, I would look through their page, because I don't want to lie to them and say, hey, I love your work, when I really don't. If I don't like their work, I won't compliment it. I will be like, hey, just came from your page. Your designs are colorful. But check out some of my swimwear work. I feel like I could add a different version of your swimwear to the market or something like that. It's tedious. Do it while you're laying in bed. Do it when you're visiting the restroom, the toilet, whatever. Everybody in every company has someone that will check their DMs. No matter how big the company is, there's somebody who is paid to run social media. They're going to see your DM. Maybe not today, but hit them again next week. Now, if you do 50 every day, if you do the math, someone's going to contact you back. And I like to contact independent brands because there's a higher chance that whoever is running their Instagram also runs their social media. I mean, whoever runs their social media also runs the company. So they're going to contact me back directly. Now, from there, once they contact me back, I know they're going to go through my work. So your work has to be good, first of all. They're going to go through your work, and then they're going to contact you back, and then they're going to be like, hey, I don't think I can afford you. And I'm like, who said anything about money? I just wanted to introduce myself to you and introduce my work in the future in case you need photography services. Now, out of 50 every day, somebody's going to contact you back. I have booked over 200 clients, has to be over 200 clients this way. Now, you can see it and be like, well, it sounds like you're chasing. I'm not. I'm introducing. Now, once do I discuss money in the DM? Because people don't like to talk about money. I want to talk about how much value I can bring to your company. People book you when you're valuable, not talented. That's why there are a lot of non-talented photographers out there booking really big jobs, because they're more aggressive out there with putting themselves out there than you are. You spend all your time learning your camera. They learn all their time learning social media. Questions? Yes.
You don't think that it takes away from your value that you're the one who's actually approaching the clients, not them approaching you? I mean, if somebody like handed over a brochure to me or phone marketing, I'm usually not interested in hearing that kind of stuff. I mean, the kind of mindset that I have, I would think it would be like, if these guys are actually legit, or if they're making it, if they're successful and they have enough clients, they wouldn't be looking for.
I think I understand your question.
Yeah.
What it sounds like is an artist's ego. Seriously, we're artists, we're creatives, we all have massive egos. I will never shoot your wedding. Who am I to shoot? I'm SHAMAYIM. I shoot for Vogue. Unless it's Beyonce and Jay-Z getting married, then I will definitely shoot your wedding. So it's ego. When you think that you're so good that you should not reach out to clients, you'll never book them.
It's not that actually. It's just that I'm putting myself in the client's shoes. I mean, when usually somebody contacts me offering their services or offering to sell me something,
Okay.
this is what I would be thinking.
Well, that's the point. You're not selling yourself. You're introducing yourself. Semantics. Rather than me contacting you as like, hey, book me as your photographer, I'm just introducing myself to you. You're going to ask me to shoot your products. I'm not asking you to do it. Yeah.
No, I'm just adding to that point. I actually have many friends that started like this, going to restaurants and just taking pictures of the food properly, and then all the clients are starting to approach them.
Can't hear you.
I have a friend of mine that actually did what you're saying. He used to go to the restaurants, take pictures of the food for free, put it on his Instagram, and now he is starting a great business and like nothing. I have another question I wanted to ask other than that. So you have to actually have a good product before introducing yourself. But if you're just starting and you don't have a proper portfolio, what would someone do? Like, let's say a beginner. What would that beginner do when they're trying to introduce themselves?
For 10 years, I shot for free. We don't like to admit it, but that's how we get our work out there. And I'm still not above working for free. There's certain projects out there that I want to work for a personal reason. Money has nothing to do with it. I would do those for free. I shoot for my friends for free all the time. But in accordance to what you were saying, we just had a discussion about this on Clubhouse. I'm not sure if Clubhouse, the app is, okay, good. Okay, it's good out here. All right. So we had a discussion on Clubhouse about, do photographers undermine the industry by working for free? Okay. Yes and no. Because if clients know that there is an 18-year-old photographer out there who's very talented, who will come in there and shoot that project for free and they get good results, why would they pay you, a seasoned photographer who has been working for 30 years learning their craft? They'll still go and book that guy for free or for a lower rate. That oversaturates the industry with cheap work. It's bad for everybody. Now, that's why it's bad, but the reason why it's good is because that person could care less about their next photographer. They're only concentrating on themselves. They won't go very far in the industry like that, though. I won't do it. I won't undermine another photographer because it's unhealthy for the industry if I don't charge my rate. Now, if I want a client who, my rate is really high, and I know it's high, and if I know that the client is kind of iffy about paying all of that money to me, what I'll do is I'll do the first job compensated, free. But I don't call it free. I'm still going to give you a contract, and in this contract, it says if you utilize the work that I did for you for free, that you have to book me. Now, this is a contract. This is not a word thing. You have to book me for your next assignment. That's in the contract, though. Now, I'm not working for free. I'm investing in you, hoping that you invest back into me. But it's not free. Okay, so yes, like she was saying, that you can build a good, solid career off of shooting stuff for free. But at what expense? If I'm a client and you were shooting for me for free, but now today you're asking me to pay, I'm not paying you if you've been working for me for free. So you can't do that and expect to actually become really successful, especially financially in this industry. Hopefully I answered that. Did I answer your question or no?
I just want to add, do you think this way messaging is it better than sponsored ads? I mean, you can actually target these.
I've used sponsored ads. They are trash. I threw away money, lots of money. Nobody is looking for a photographer to do a sponsored ad and booking them. So I would much rather just sit up there every day while I'm in transit to work or whatever and just get on my DMs and contact designers. Because please remember, as a fashion photographer, your clients are not models. I have to say this every time I see photographers because they think that models should pay them. Models, for the most part, have no money until like they are way up there. Then when they're so famous, they don't have to pay you. So don't look at models like they should be paying you. Our clients, for the most part, are designers. That's why I spend all day DMing new designers to introduce my work. Not models. Please, photographers, get out of the bad habit of contacting models, spending all your days contacting models. If you want to photograph them, that's one thing, but not for work. They can't afford you.
And you still do that for less, let's say, premium brands and like fashion brands and fashion prospect clients with your name now? Yeah, I mean, now you shoot for Vogue, you shoot internationally, and you still seek less known brands, less famous brands. Still, so far until now,
Do I still
Yeah.
shoot unknown
you
brands?
still introduce yourself 50 times a day,
Absolutely.
even to less established businesses.
Absolutely. One day they're going to be an established business. I'm investing. It's the same thing when I was working with unknown models before they became famous. I invested in them early. I would see a really beautiful model who had everything it takes to be a supermodel. I would get them before the agencies got them. I would get them before they knew that they were beautiful. And I would develop them. And good story about that. This was almost 15 years ago. There was this model who showed up at my shoot. I was her first photographer. She had never been in front of a professional camera. Most photographers who are established would not work with what we call a green model, a new model. But she was so beautiful. And I was like, this girl is going to make it. Her name is Jasmine Tukes. She became the highest level of Victoria's Secret angel because of the work that we were doing all those years ago. Because I saw something, it's the same thing. I use her as an example because it's the same thing with clients. I can look at a brand and I was like, this designer is extremely talented. They have no money, but this is also the little trade secret that I personally do because I'm a businessman before I'm a photographer. I, right now, co-own 12 different fashion companies because they could not afford me in the beginning. So I gave them a contract that was like, I understand you cannot afford my photography rate, but I believe in your brand. Make me a ghost investor in your company. This is how much I would have charged you for my photography services. This is how much I'm investing back into your company. Now, I'm a co-owner of their brands. It's in my best interest to give you the best photographs because I'm a co-owner of your company now. A lot of photographers don't think like that. I went to school for business though. So now I'm getting residual income every time one of those designers sell a sock.
Thank you.
Yep.
So you emphasized the really important point to photographers that models are not their clients.
Yes.
And that they shouldn't be asking for money from the models. But what about the reverse? Because I've been approached before by photographers where they ask to basically book the model as though it's a job, even though it's just a test shoot or if it's just for magazine submissions. So what do you think about photographers approaching models and offering them for a paid thing?
You're
test
going to
shoot?
agree with what I'm about to say, but if they're contacting a model, they're already doing the wrong thing. They need to contact their agency. Okay, so there's a couple of points that I want to make there. Repeat the question though, because I want to make sure I answer your question first.
So some photographers approach models or their agencies
Yes.
offering to pay for it, to shoot with the model, even
Yes.
though it's just a test shoot.
Yes,
So what do you think about photographers doing that?
that photographer is a very smart person. Because if you want to elevate the quality of your portfolio, you need quality models. And if you're just waiting for like the free model who needs to develop their book, they may not be that experienced. A good experienced model is going to elevate the value of your brand. Because if they see you are working with quality models, the client, they're going to think that you're more prestigious than what you really are. So one of my favorite models in the world is Joan Smalls. If I could afford to, I would totally pay Joan Smalls for a shoot. But first of all, let me clarify something with photographers. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be paid by models for your services. When you are to a certain level, you don't have to do test shoots for free. Agencies usually will contact me and we'll work out a deal. The agency was like, hey, we know you don't shoot the new girls anymore, but we want you to develop our new face board. And I'm like, okay, how much? And they were like, okay, can you work out something for us? Because the girls don't have any money. I know the girls don't have any money. I don't want the agency's money. This is what I want. Because there's more forms of currency than money. On that other board where those more prestigious girls are, I will develop your new girls if you give me one of those for one of my personal shoots. Exchange of services. So you can get paid in a lot of ways other than just money. But no, if a model is offering to pay for your service, by all means, don't be like, hey, I don't take model money. No, take their money. Because you are still providing a service. And if they feel like your work is valuable enough to them that you will elevate them, then you should charge. You should also charge a model if to work with them, it does not increase the value of your portfolio. There are just some models out there who shouldn't be models. And they should be paying for you to make them look like a model because it's your time. You could have been working on a client that day. You could have been doing anything. So they should pay for those services. But it's a symbiotic relationship between the photographer and the model. Always remember that comes first. So I shoot those models who are new in exchange for getting higher end quality models. Or are you just going to give me good old fashioned money for it? Questions? No questions? Cool. Okay, so I would like to move also into building your team because that is a very important part of the business of photography. And I'm grateful because I have one of my important team members, Shadara Holmes, sitting right here, who is assisting me. She is also my in-house makeup artist. And this is her first time in Egypt. So welcome to Egypt. It's important to build those type of relationships, especially in multiple markets. I can go to almost any of the fashion capitals in the world, and I already have a team based there. And that just comes from a whole lot of traveling, a whole lot of social media networking, introducing myself, just like I would to a client. I do the same thing with a makeup artist, a hairstylist, or a wardrobe stylist in any city that I go to. I always want to work with new team members. Always, because that team member who you just met, let's say for instance, they're a makeup artist. That makeup artist is going to introduce your work to their established clients. And you can do the same. Everybody is in a symbiotic relationship with each other. There is nobody too small on my set to where they don't deserve respect, because you just never know who knows who on any set. I'll give you an example. I was shooting a magazine editorial, and this gentleman walks into the studio. I don't know him, but I walk over to him and I introduce. I don't have an ego on my set, so I introduce. How you doing? My name's SHAMAYIM. What brings you onto the set? And I'm asking for security reasons because you just walked in on my set. And so the wardrobe stylist rushes over to me. She's like, "You were working. I didn't want to interrupt you, but this guy wants to sit in on your set. Is it okay?" And I'm looking at her like, that's all the information you're going to give me? She was just like, I'll tell you after. I trust my team. He sat in on the shoot. No idea who the guy is. I forget about him because I zone out when I'm working. Come to find out, this is Beyonce knows the Beyonce's wardrobe stylist, who was just in town, saw on my Instagram story that I was shooting that day, and decided to come by. That's how I was able to book some very prominent jobs, by just being nice to the random stranger who was on set. That guy could have been anybody or nobody at all. But building a team that you can trust helps provide those type of opportunities. And that also goes back to that social media thing, because he knew that we were on set because of my Instagram story. But so how do you go about building your team in the beginning? I'm still doing it now. All these years later, I'm a perfectionist on set, and I demand the same thing from everybody I work with. I demand good energy from everybody. Like I was trained in New York City. I'm just going to use, a nicer word. There are a lot of a-holes in this fashion industry. They're very, very mean people. Their egos are inflated. And they do the same thing that the next person next to them does. And they feel like they should be like that because that's what's expected in the fashion industry. It is not. Kindness is the best thing. I booked so many jobs off just being kind on set. And the model going back and telling her agency, "Oh my God, I love his team. We had so much fun." The agency was like, "Oh, really?" They send me more models. Those models, they get the photos, they put them on Instagram. Their clients see us, and then they go and contact us. All of that happens because you're just kind on set and you don't have an ego. I don't care how many jobs I've done. I don't care who I've worked for. I'm still a person. You're still a person. Even if you're just the person who does the nails on set, even if you're the guy who's sweeping the studio, you still deserve respect, because that person sweeping my studio today may be a creative director of a magazine company in 10 years. And he or she will remember the fact that you were not a very nice person. Building my team, I contact just as many, not quite as many, probably 10 creatives a day on social media. I will go to some of my favorite photographers, magazines, just fashion people, and I will see their jobs, and hopefully, if they are decent people, they caption all of the credits of everybody who worked on that assignment. And if I like the makeup artist, I just click on that, introduce myself, love your work, love what you're doing, wanted to introduce myself. If we're ever in the same city, let me take you to lunch. Now, I'm going to use that as a segue into my next point about business that I learned the hard way. It's called the power of lunch and dinner. Now, this is an investment thing. So whenever I'm going to a new market or I want to work with new creatives, when I contact them, I do not automatically say, let's work together. Everybody probably contacts them and says the same thing. What I do is, I think everybody has to eat. Not many people turn down free food. So what I do is I establish some independent restaurants, not commercial restaurants, but little smaller places that are quaint. And I'll tell you why in a second, but I will hit them with a DM and I was like, hey, my name is SHAMAYIM. I'm a fashion photographer. I love your work. I would love to get inside your brain and see what makes you tick. Can I take you to lunch on next Wednesday at 3 p.m.? I'm very specific, so we don't go back and forth. And they were like, oh my God, I love your work. I would love to go to lunch with you. Great. Now, when I tell them where we're going, if I find these little bitty hidden restaurants, they've never heard of it. What that does is it makes them remember you. If it was a restaurant they've already been to, they're not going to remember you. But they were like, oh my God, I never even knew about this place. And I'm like, yeah, I come here all the time. And I'm not lying. I probably take all of my potential clients there. But I go there before they get there and I talk to the waiter or the server or the maitre d', and I'm going to be like, hey, I'm bringing this client in. Can you guys come out and introduce yourself like you know me? And the waiter will come out and be like, SHAMAYIM, welcome back. Oh my God, who is your date? Oh, and that way they remember you. The client remembers you, the potential client. And we sit there and we eat because I know there's one thing that is attached to human memory stronger than any other thing, and that's the olfactory sense, the sense of smell. So I'm always going to order some food that smells really good because you're going to remember that food. And when you remember that food, you're going to remember that I took you to lunch. And when you remember that I took you to lunch, you're going to be like, oh crap, that photographer, SHAMAYIM. And that's how I'm going to book that job. So if that lunch costs me maybe 10, 15 US dollars, because I'm going to take you to someplace cheap, unless like you're a bigger client, it's going to be good food though. That investment may have just secured me 20,000 US dollars. And I'm going to take you there and I'm going to research you first. I'm going to be looking at your social media. I'm going to go to your page, or you're going to a personal page. I'm like, oh, they like to eat falafel. I got the perfect place. And they're going to be like, oh my God, I love falafel. I'm going to be like, really? Me too. Because it's nothing but marketing. That's it. And you're not being fake. Being fake, I can't even think about. No, you're investing. But that's how I secure a lot of my clients. Once the DM goes through, I'm not going to just want you to just show up on set. I want to get a feel for you also, because I want to know how much I should be charging you. And I can really get a taste for that based upon what kind of wine you ordered when we went out to dinner. I'm like, oh, you're classy. You got money. That rate's going to go up. So, questions about my little guerrilla marketing tactics. Do any of you guys have guerrilla marketing tactics that you use that a lot of people don't know about? Good, I'll give you some more of mine then. Okay, so another way in which I go about generating clients is through building that team that I have contacted consistently through Instagram. We put together these little, they're not workshops, we call them gatherings. They just happen to be in the right place at the right time. But let's say for a second, Shadara and I, we'll be in London. What we'll do is we'll contact everybody we want to work with in London. Well, this was before COVID and everybody had to be 6 feet or whatever. We would invite everybody together and be like, hey, we're having a little small get together on the rooftop restaurant of some quaint, trendy place in London. We would love for you to meet you. Could you stop by? And it ends up being like 20 people showing up, and we strategically put all these people together to network. Now we can go and meet you instead of where social media is like a distance thing. It's not personal, but in your face, I could come in and was like, love your work. Do you have any other work that we haven't seen yet on social media? Because I want you to think I really, really, really like your work. Show me some good stuff. We get over there, we start talking. They're going to start drinking. They're going to get happier. And I'm going to book a couple of clients that way. So it may have, last time we did this was in New York. It cost us no money. We just went to a hotel, asked them if we could use their lobby to have a couple friends over. Told them we were in the industry, and everybody likes fat people because they think we're all rich. So we had like a group of people come in, hotel made money, the people bought drinks, so they win. They make us look nice because they come out and they talk to us by name. They're like, are you guys enjoying your stay? Would you guys like some more Turkish tea? And everybody's looking at us like we're super successful. And we literally put it together in 10 minutes. That's another good guerrilla method of generating clients. So don't think about just contacting someone directly or sending out your portfolio to clients. That's not the world we live in anymore. You're going to have to be more creative with putting your work out there. Questions? So far we have spoke about money, licensing, contracts, team building. One more thing I want to discuss with you guys is about the important relationship between the photographer and the gatekeepers. The gatekeepers are essentially your creative directors. Those are the people who are usually, you don't want to contact the client directly. You want to contact their creative director. So you got creative directors, your modeling agencies, and your art directors, and your fashion editors. Those are your gatekeepers that are preventing you from getting the type of assignments and jobs that you really, really want. Most photographers think that if I contact Saint Laurent on Instagram, somebody should hit me back and say they like my work. That's not how it works. How do I find out who are the people that I need to contact in order to introduce my work to them? I go on LinkedIn. Do you all have LinkedIn in Egypt? Wonderful. It is the most underrated business app that you have access to. It's not as fun as Clubhouse or Instagram, but it's more important. So say, for instance, I want to shoot for Vogue Arabia. What I would do is I would go on LinkedIn first. I would type in Vogue Arabia. I would see who on LinkedIn works for Vogue Arabia. I don't want the editor-in-chief. The editor-in-chief does not answer her emails. I want her intern. I want the secondary assistant. Find them on LinkedIn, then I find them on Instagram, then I send them a DM. And I'm like, love what you guys are doing recently with Vogue Arabia. Love the direction of the wardrobe. Love these incredible locations. I love the diverse models that you guys are using. I am a huge fan. I just wanted to introduce myself. Not once did I even say I was a photographer. People love compliments. Everybody has a huge ego. Social media gave us these big egos. They're going to come, they're going to read your DM, then they're going to look at your work. Then they're going to contact, oh my God, I love your work. You should be shooting for us. Oh, you think? Yeah, like I need to introduce you to our editor-in-chief. Really? You think that they like my work? Yeah, let me arrange that for you. That's how I first got my first Vogue magazine. It was, I'm not going to put them out there publicly. It was a Vogue in Europe. Went on LinkedIn, did the exact same things that I told you guys, and contacted the intern. The intern sent me over to the assistant editor. The assistant editor sent me over to senior editor. And the senior editor was like, we love your work, but you're not here. And I was like, what makes you think I'm not there? And they were going to be like, you're in America. And I'm like, I'm wherever that plane takes me. I was like, if you say that I can get this meeting, I will be there. I keep almost slipping and saying what city it is. So I legitimately took my credit card, next day, booked a flight there, went there. They act like they didn't even know who I was. So what I do? I didn't cry and complain because they had something that I wanted and I needed. So every day I went to that office. This is getting rid of my ego. Went to that office, knocked on the door, and I brought fresh croissants from this little bakery during lunchtime every day. Hey, SHAMAYIM, just wanted to grab you guys some lunch. fashion photographer. I'm in your city for the next couple of days. Wanted you guys to review my portfolio. Every day. Oh, well, there's no busy. I mean, there's no slots available. There's no slots available. There's no slots available. Nobody can meet you today. I stayed for 6 days until I ran out of money. And I was like, all right, lose my ego again, call my mom. I need some money to stay in this hotel. And on the 9th day, somebody finally let me come in the movie. They were like, who is this crazy Black American with Bob Marley hair who comes to our door every single day asking for a meeting? And I was like, that's all I want. Give me 5 minutes. I had practiced up on my Italian, went in there, butchered my words. And they were like, just speak in English. And I knew I was making a fool of myself, but I knew they would remember me. They saw my work and they were like, oh, your work is really good. I was like, they never even saw my work. Saw my work, and that's how I booked my first campaign for Vogue. But it was tenacity. It was about thinking creatively and finding a way when everybody told me, oh, no, they just don't accept photographers. And you have to be from their country because it's a small industry. It is a small industry. It's one of the biggest magazines in the world, but the office had like 15 people. That's it. I shook every one of their hands because I wanted to know everybody in there. And I've been working with them now for 3 years because of it. So it's just a little about thinking creatively and making yourself more valuable and lose the ego. I don't care who I work for. I don't care how much I get paid. Every client, I meet them on their level. I have no enemies. I have nothing but friends. That's how I go about it. Nobody can tell you no when you know you're good enough. You just got to be at it. You got to be consistent with it. Questions about anything that I've spoken about today? No questions. I like that because I'm usually having like 30 questions in my face. So wonderful then. All right, so I'm going to do a quick little wrap up then of everything that I discussed. And if you have any questions pertaining to that when I go run through, just let me know. Licensing, make sure that you study and research the licensing in your country or in your market. I cannot break it down for you here because I do not know what the laws are in Egypt regarding licensing. In the United States, the photographer owns all the rights to the photographs. I'm going to say that again. The photographers own the rights to the photographs, even if you're being paid for them. I don't know what the law is here, but if you come to the United States of America, you own your photos, even if you get paid for them. Now, there are licensing clauses from big clients who will try to scare you away and say, we want to do a buyout. A buyout is when they own universal rights to the images for the duration of their lives. Forever. Now, I didn't know this until it was too late, but according to the law, even if they buy out the licensing for your images, you still own the images. A lot of photographers don't know that. They think that they're selling the rights to the images away. Read your contracts. In the contract, it may say that you cannot utilize the images outside of certain terms. Read the small print. There's always going to be some small print. That also could mean that they could sue you if you even post the images on your social media without their permission. Now, I put a clause into all of my contracts saying that I have the right to utilize the images for my portfolio and for my social media. But if you don't put that in there, you don't have that right. Yes, you still own the images, but you don't have the rights to those images. So study your contracts. Not just for knowing your usage rights, but also knowing your money rights, because you should probably be compensated if you find that image beyond the time of the contract. Let me give you an example. I did a shoot for a hair company in 2016. They had the rights until 2017. In 2018, I was in a car in Paris and I saw a billboard with my images from that job on it. They were still using them internationally because they thought that I wouldn't see them. So they didn't think that they had to pay me. I don't get upset. I call my attorney. Let them get upset over it. Plus, I don't want to ruin the relationship with the client. So we got back pay for it. If you can prove that it was up past the terms of your agreement, you get paid for it. They're going to get upset, but that's fine. Those are your images. You deserve your money for it. That's how you find rich photographers. Not from day rates, not from models. Another thing when you're considering with these licensings and these contracts is that you yourself are not going to understand the terms that they use in and this paperwork. It's okay. Get rid of your ego. Take it to somebody who understands what they're reading. And then they can break it down for you in simpler words to where you understand. But don't just rely on an attorney or a manager for your business. You need to learn it yourself also, because they can be jerking you for your money also. Like I said, my background is in business, not photography. That's why this stuff is so much more important to me, and that's why I want to share it with all of you guys. And that's why I did a talk today on business of photography instead of what settings I use on my camera, because you can find that on YouTube. So that's licensing. All right, team. Remember, contact as many team members as you possibly can. Yes, you may have a certain group of people who you only work with most of the time, but you want to network. You want to expand that. Say, for instance, somebody gets sick one day and you have to call in somebody else. You want to have a database of professionals that you can work with, who you work with consistently before you bring them on for a client. They may be very talented, but if they're not nice people and you introduce them to a client, you may lose that job. I've had that happen to me before. I've lost a job because they didn't like the makeup artist and the hairstylist that I brought in on my set. So they were like, they judged me based upon the team that I brought in. So that's very, very important. You build a team who reflects who you are as a professional. Don't forget the guerrilla marketing techniques about Instagram. Instagram is still a big deal right now, all over the world. Facebook is a huge deal across the world as well. I know they own Instagram, but they're two different individuals. In the United States, Facebook isn't big. So instead of wasting time on Facebook, I just post stuff on my Instagram that automatically posts on all of these other networks. But if there's a social media platform, I'm on it. It took me a second to understand TikTok because I think I'm too old. But I went and I got me some really young interns who understood it very, very well. And I was like, oh, I can do that. I'm not dancing, but I can get on there and show you guys behind the scenes of my shoots. I've booked a couple of clients off of TikTok. I like TikTok now. If I'm booking money, I like TikTok. So don't sleep on any of them just because you're thinking like, I'm too old for this, or this isn't my type of thing. Find a way to like it. Or go get you some interns or assistants who do. You need to have a presence on all of these platforms because you don't know where your clients are. I want to be everywhere my clients are because I like my lifestyle and I don't want to pay for anything. I want my clients to pay for it. That's something that I personally put into the universe, or prayer, whatever you do, early in my career. I was like, I want to travel all around the world and I don't want to pay for it. I want to be paid to travel all around the world. You could do that as a photographer. Also, where your money is not. Your money is not in editorial magazines, but you still need them. Once again, don't chase money. I made the most money off of a non-paid gig, and I'll explain that. So before this Time magazine shoot, my rate capped at about, I did not make more than $5,000 for any job, US. After it, I was able to charge upwards of 10,000. Why? Because of prestige. So before you go out there and spend another 5,000 US on a camera, think about where you could take that money and then reinvest it back into your company in a more tangible way. What I did was I took my accolades, my accomplishments, my awards, and I put those in my bio on my Instagram. Award-winning fashion photographer for Time magazine, yada, 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 yada. What that shows is that I'm valuable to the marketplace. That's what a client wants to see. They want to be able to brag about who they just booked for a job. They love saying, oh my gosh, Shamayim just flew back in from Egypt. He's going to be shooting our campaign. He's so amazing. He shot for Time magazine. I didn't shoot for Time magazine. I was featured in Time magazine. I just changed the words around. Not lying, I'm just changing the words around. Award-winning fashion photographer for Time magazine. That sounds way more prestigious than Shamayim, fashion photographer. That just puts me in the same boat as everyone else. But when I'm able to be like, I was the only fashion photographer to have an exhibition at the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C., it probably would, I can't even think of a room small enough to show you how small my gallery was. But it didn't matter. It was the fact that I had that now to add to my brand. And because of that, clients were able or willing to pay me more money. So go after awards. Go win some awards and then make your rate go up. Go on Google and type in fashion photography competitions, photography competitions, editorial competitions, all throughout the world, and then submit to them. The most you probably pay is like $100 to submit your work. Most of the time it's free. But if you even place in it, like first, second, or third, you can still use those credentials to make your rate go up. So nobody cares if you shot for Vogue. Nobody cares if you shot for Elle magazine, V magazine, none of these magazines. They care about awards and prestige more so than what job you did last. Those also matter, but not as much as prestige. Questions about that? Okay, questions about gatekeepers. Who gatekeepers, how to get the gatekeepers, how to bring them on your side. One thing I didn't mention, modeling agencies. Why do you need them? You need them because they are gatekeepers to the talent that you need in order for your work to look the very best. You want great relationships with your agencies. Great relationships, not the models. I messed up for 10 years. I tried to establish relationships with models. They don't care about you after the shoot. You'll be lucky if they even credit you on the photos they post on Instagram. So invest in your agents. If your agent leaves that one agency and goes to another agency, they take their list of photographers with them. When clients come to modeling agencies, they're going to go through the models' portfolios. They're going to see photos in there, and they're going to be like, oh, wow, who took this photo of this model? This is an amazing photograph. You want that agency to be like, oh, SHAMAYIM shot that. You will love him. You should hire him for the job. I booked many jobs because of recommendations from the modeling agencies directly. So you want good relationships with them. Plus, it's a scratch my back, I scratch your back, you scratch my back situation with the agencies. Take care of those independent models who are not famous yet. Give them really great photographs that the agency can make money off of, because that's what they do. In return, you build a good relationship with them. They send you some of the more successful models because they know that you're going to create good images for that model. But don't try to skip over the steps and building relationships. So that's your modeling agency. I told you guys how I went about contacting the gatekeepers to get inside of magazines by utilizing LinkedIn. I told you how I skip over a lot of steps to get directly in contact with clients by utilizing guerrilla tactics through 50 DMs a day on Instagram and social media. It's a lot. Do not be discouraged. Just keep doing it. It becomes easier. Do it on your way to work. Do it on you, whatever you're doing. Just get on this phone and just be like, hi, come look at my work. So it's not as easy as, it's not as easy as I'm trying to make it sound because it's tedious. You get bored, you lose words, you don't even know what to type anymore because you've done it 49 times that day. Find a new way to do it. Any questions about that? Yes. Ask it again so everybody can hear you. I heard you, but I want everybody to hear you.
Okay, so my question was, what advice can you give to young photographers that don't hear back from the agencies, mainly because maybe the agencies think that the photographer is not ready to shoot the models, even though the model, maybe she's a development model, but maybe the agencies don't think that this specific photographer add to the model's portfolio?
Great question, great question. Okay, so you're gonna get rejected a lot. To this day, I still get rejections. Not from modeling agencies, but from clients. They may just not like the aesthetic of my work. I shoot very dramatic lighting, very dramatic shadows. I'm very editorial. And some clients, they want more cleaner looking images. That's fine. It doesn't mean, you have to realize that just because someone tells you no, like an agency, it doesn't mean that you're not a talented photographer. It does not mean that you're not creating good work. It's just not what they're looking for. You're gonna get so many no's, a lot of no's. Just be consistent. And if I'm gonna walk away from any situation, I wanna walk away with knowledge. So I'm gonna ask that agency, if they told me that they don't wanna work with me, I'm gonna be like, what can I do to enhance my work that will make me more valuable for you? It's just about being humble. And they can come back and we're like, well, we like for our models to work with photographers who have more field lighting on the face. So not so, as you see, I use a lot of shadows. That may be too edgy for a lot of agencies. They're like, we need more lifestyle stuff. We want the girls to be smiling. And I'm like, smiling? My models don't smile. So I'm just not for that agency. Guess what? There's still 100 other agencies to contact. And also remember that that's not the opinion of the agency, that's the opinion of that booker of that agency. There may be another booker at that same agency who loves your work. That happens with me all the time. Last time I was rejected by an agency was 2014, and they gave me valuable information. It was like, your work is way too edgy. Our models don't book Vogue. Our models book Target. Target is a department store where girls are walking around with like jeans and a t-shirt. And I was like, oh, I don't shoot that. And they were like, right. They were like, if you could show us some more work like that, then you can work with our models. What did I do? I went and got me a couple pair of jeans and a t-shirt, put them on a model, went back over there, and they were like, oh, this is better. And I was like, okay, but I don't need this from the model. What I'll do is I'll shoot what the agency needs, but after that, my team and I are going to shoot what I need. And usually we can work out that deal and we go forth from there. But yeah, I get rejected a lot. Any more questions? Good? Well, then that concludes my talk for today. I would love to meet you guys after all of this. Shake your hand, introduce. Like I said, I'm big on networking. And as many people as I can meet here in Egypt because I come here so often, I would love that. And I may be able to take you out for coffee. Thank you, guys.
يلا بسرعة.